Councillor Kevin Klein from Charleswood, Tuxedo, and Westwood. Kevin, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hal. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, until we get Kim on the line, because I wanted to start with her and have her tell the story, but you heard from Kim. She's in your area. What did she tell you? She's pretty upset about what happened to her son, and I guess another one of her sons recently was the victim of crime as well.
Yeah, I had a conversation with her. Actually, they don't live in Charleswood. They live across the road in River Heights, or in Tuxedo. They live across the road in River Heights, but they go to the park all the time, as many people do.
Sure.
And that's what she was telling me. How I at first I was concerned with how her son felt, and this is going to be something in his mind for a very long time, and will probably impact him for a while. We talked about that. She had told me about what happened to her other son very recently. His bike was stolen at the store very close to that community club. It's just been happening an awful lot, and it's not just in one area. It's across the city.
Yeah. Janice Lukes, councillor for Waverly West, was on earlier. She said the same thing. Now, most of the calls that she's getting is about property crimes. Obviously, what happened to Kim's son Max, not a property crime, but would you say most of the calls you get as well are property crimes?
Yes, property crimes, crimes of packages still being stolen, houses being broken into, sheds being broken into. Those types of crime. Vandalism is on the rise.
And I think we've got Kim on the line now, so let's bring Kim in here. Kevin, I'll get back to you in a second. Kim, good afternoon. Thank you for doing this.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
What a scary situation for your son, Max, eh?
Yeah, very scary, very alarming, and, really quite rattled all of us, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. At gunpoint, bear spray was involved as well. What did they take?
They took my son's bike, his phone, his friend's AirPods, his bag, basketball shoes, and a basketball.
And your other son, Kevin and I were just talking about this, your other son was the victim of crime as well.
Well, actually, it was Max both times. He was at the gas station in Tuxedo the night previously and went in to give his buddy a couple dollars to help pay for whatever candy he was buying, and someone kind of came out of nowhere and almost ripped the bike out of his hands. So,
Kevin and I were just talking about this. Janice Lukes from Waverly West, councillor for Waverly West, was on earlier, and she said it, and Kevin just said it. This is happening everywhere, right? I mean, you were in a neighborhood where this sort of thing, in the past at least, has not been as common as it is now. Is that fair to say?
I would certainly say that one of the reasons we love living in our community is because it is very pedestrian-minded, and we love the fact that our children can go out safely for walks and on their bikes and scooters, etc., in the neighborhood, especially in COVID times, and go to their local community center and play. And have fun. And, now this happening and other sort of stories similar to it is really unnerving and quite frazzling for everybody in the community who, one of the reasons we love to live here is because of that. And these people are really, it's just not fair.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk to Kevin on the phone, as not your counselor, but a counselor in the area, what do you want to see council do? What's the solution here, Kim? What would you like to see happen?
Well, Kevin was quite gracious when we were speaking, and I will say he was very empathetic and very supportive. One of the things that he had mentioned and we had talked about was just increasing the cadet capacity in our neighborhoods. For them to be able to be roaming the streets and just having a bit of a presence there was one option. Obviously, the hot spots, like obviously now Tuxedo Community Center has had more crime as of late, and, keeping an eye on that, as well as all of our other, sacred spaces for our kids to have fun in. They shouldn't be scared to go out to their local community center and play and ride a bike and for fear that it's going to get stolen. So something has to change, and it's just we need to have more eyes, more police presence here to protect our community.
Kevin, is that the solution? I like Janice Lukes a lot. She didn't really have any solid answers as to what needs to happen. She felt like we needed to be more aware of what's happening around us. We're in the middle of a pandemic. She talked about, record amounts of money being spent on policing. We're spending more now on social programs than ever. Is there an answer here?
Well, I like Janice as well, but we're not really spending record amounts on police. That's a fallacy. We're actually spending less. It's the contract that's spending more. We're down the number of officers that we had compared to 5 years ago. So I believe the answer, one of the answers, and she's correct, one of the answers we talked about was maybe utilizing the cadets as opposed to being always in the downtown core, driving around in our parks and areas and having that presence and increasing their numbers to have that presence. That's one option. Another option is calling on, which I would do, is call on the Winnipeg Police Service to use their available resources and execute their outstanding warrants. Make arrests on any leads associated with illegal firearms. We have a huge amount of illegal firearms in this city. Ramp up the pressure on street gangs and organized crime groups in our city. And I say that because I've talked to members of this service. I've talked to other jurisdictions. And I had a conversation with Gino DeStasio a long time ago. He said, if you go after the top 100 criminals in the city, you know who they are. You put the pressure on them. You let them know they're not welcome in our city. At the same time, though, we have to reallocate some funding to youth programs. And we have to look especially at youths that don't have the means and families don't have the means and start giving them options for programs to participate in because they're left out. And now the gangs are recruiting these kids at a very young age. We need to step in. We need to step in and step up and give those kids another option so that they don't have to get or feel pressured to be involved in a gang, so that they have a more positive option. And we've stopped doing that. And if you go back in time and you talk to Gino, there are correlations. You can see the numbers changing as cities got out of community programming. Crime started to go up with young people. So we need to focus on from two different perspectives. There's two ways to go about this.
Kevin, before I let you go, and I want to ask Kim one more thing, but I'll ask you a final question here, Kevin. And I asked Janice Lukes this as well, and Jeff Currier was talking about it earlier. What do we do about bus shelters to get them back to being used for people that are waiting for a bus and not being, a place where Winnipeg's homeless have to live, or, the officer was stabbed with a syringe at one? I mean, what do we do to get bus shelters back to being bus shelters?
First of all, I want to say my thoughts are with the officer and his family, because people might not know this, but they have to go through a regime of testing because they could die. Right? Like we don't know what is on that needle. We don't know what was in that needle. So there's a risk. There's a huge risk to that, and that's on that family. And it's difficult to go through this time. So I'm thinking about them and that family. And I've heard people talk about it. We have to address it because some people are choosing to be there because they choose to be there. So we have to sit down and address it. We're simply ignoring it right now. Bus shelters are, we had them a long time ago, and they were taken away in the city, and now we're talking about spending more money on them. We need to manage the situation, and we can't just say, it's housing. It's not just housing. So we have to put a plan together and really start working on this, because we cannot continue to have that criminal activity if that is going on there, and we need to open up those shelters for everybody's use. It's a matter of safety, not just for other residents. It's a matter of safety for those that have been seeking refuge in a bus shelter. Like, we have to think of this from a different perspective and not be afraid to identify the issue, talk about the issue, and work together instead of pointing fingers, all different levels of government and such, pointing at everybody else. Let's just sit down and get this fixed, because it cannot continue. The future of our city can't be like this, because nobody is going to come here and open businesses if this continues this way.
Mm-hmm. And Kim, what have you told Max? Is Max sticking closer to home these days after not just one but two incidents? How are you handling this as a family?
We're just making sure that he knows he has a lot of support, that generally people are kind. This is not a typical incident that happens in our neighborhood. So he feels, we're keeping a close eye on him, but we're also really making sure that the lines of communication are very open. He knows, and I've talked to multiple police officers thus far, as well as Kevin. I haven't spoken to my city councilor yet. I've left a message for him, but he hasn't gotten back. So he knows that people are taking this very seriously, and working to make a difference. So, yeah.
Kim, thanks for joining me today for a few minutes here and telling us about it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Kim Wallace, mom of Max, who was robbed at gunpoint, and Kevin Klein, counselor for Charleswood, Tuxedo, and Westwood. Kevin, thank you.
Thank you, Hal.
All right, 2:45, quarter